Alrighty, welcome to the first module in phase 2, all about self-control. I'm so excited. This is my bread and butter, my piece de resistance. This is this is my favorite thing ever to teach because it's such a powerful tool that can be applied in so many ways. So in this module, we're going to be talking about tackling triggers. Now, first thing I want to touch on is what in the world, Olivia, is a trigger, okay? Because I think it's kind of a loaded word, and I don't want you to be intimidated by it. So a trigger can literally be anything that elicits a response in us that we maybe don't feel like we have control over, right? So if somebody cuts you off in traffic and you get angry, if somebody makes a rude or insensitive remark about you or someone you know, and it defeats you or it makes you feel awful or it enrages you, right? It could even be something that is kind of you don't even know. You might not even know what the trigger is, but all of a sudden, emotions are going out of control. All of a sudden, you're crying. All of a sudden, you're completely manic or all over the place, okay? So, triggers, sometimes we have the awareness of what they are, and that's a really cool thing to be able to see. However, sometimes we don't, and emotions can just kind of come out of nowhere. For women, this one can literally be periods. Like, that can be a trigger, and we don't even realize it until all of a sudden it happens, and we're like, okay, everything else led up to this point makes sense, right? But I do know with my experience with bipolar, anxiety and depression, with anxiety, I knew that cars triggered my anxiety. However, with bipolar and depression, I didn't know what was triggering me. People would ask me, well, why? Why are you feeling that way? I don't know. I'm just feeling this way. So, triggers can be loads of things. They can trigger traumatic, it could be something little that reminds you of a traumatic experience that you had, right? It could be so many things. So I hope you kind of get an understanding for a trigger doesn't have to be something specific. It doesn't have to be something crazy big or anything like that. It can literally be anything. There are times when my kids have triggered me. My husband's triggered me. My dog has triggered me. Okay. So triggers are just anything where all of a sudden you're like, I don't have control over my reaction or myself, right? So most people try to address the trigger itself. They, okay, let me back up a bit. Most people try to address the trigger themselves. However, we don't always have control over what that trigger is, or we may not know what it is, right? So, or it's something that, like I said, we literally physically cannot control. I can't control what somebody says. I can't control when my dog poops on the floor. Okay, so a lot of times that'll kind of elicit a response of avoidance or ramping up the control or resentment or revenge. And honestly, this is something you might see, for example, in somebody that's more so a bully. If they're feeling down about themselves, that might be a trigger. Might not be something external, might be something internal, makes them feel a trigger, so then they'll go and put somebody down so they can feel better about themselves, okay? And maybe and I hope they're not intentionally doing that, but it might be just an automatic response. So, a lot of people try to address the trigger. That is one way you can go about it. However, I think it's more effective to change your trigger response. Basically how you cope, how you react, all that good stuff, okay? So, what is your automatic thoughts? What's your behaviors? What's your body doing? All these things, right? So there's the mental, there's the emotional, there's the physical, and there's the behavioral. Let me break that down for a second. The mental is going to be when you're triggered, what thoughts are running through your brain, right? The emotional might be that anger or that sadness, that emotional response. The physical or you could say the physiological, right, is going to be how does your body react? Do your muscles get tight? Does your heart start to race? Are your pits just pouring sweat? Are you feeling nauseous? What's your body physically doing? And then behavioral, how are you acting or behaving in response to the trigger? Are you throwing things? Are you completely shutting down and closing yourself off? Are you running away? Are you looking for a fight? Those kinds of things. So those are all components in our trigger response. Okay, that's what I want us to focus on. Not trying to control or avoid the triggers, because again, we want to step outside our comfort zone. We want to live our lives. We want to do the things we want to do. So we can't manipulate the whole world to be the way we want it. So how can we go about our lives or pursue the things that we want, right? And be in control of ourselves. This is the magic right here. This is magic. Okay, no, sorry. So how I want to teach you to do this is to shift from one conditioning, which is the automatic response or the automatic reaction, right? To another set of conditioning, which is going to be your response with a custom built solution. All right? So we want to take your reaction and turn it into responding. What's the difference? Reaction is automatic, responding is intentional. Now, eventually, your response may become your reaction, and your reaction might be to take a deep breath, to be really calm, and to step outside for a second. I don't know. Your reaction, can change, but I want to change that's what we want to shift right now, is the reaction that feels out of control into a intentional response where you're like, okay, I'm stepping in. So the reason I say this is a custom-built solution is because I cannot tell you how to do that with what to do that with or what you need, okay? That's what I have come to learn. I think that is taught a lot is, oh, you just go and meditate. Oh, you go do this. Oh, yada, yada, yada. We're all so different, and our trigger response is very different, and that needs to be taken into account. And so what we can do with what feels like complete and total chaos that has no rhyme or reason, right? It's like you get on, it doesn't even feel like, it's like if you threw a roller coaster into a tornado sometimes, you're like, you just brace for dear life. You're like, I'm just gonna hold on. I know when I would get triggered, that was what it was. Like I would just ride the ride. I didn't feel like I could do anything, I could step in or anything like that. So I would just brace myself and ride the ride. However, if we really look at it, just like how we talked about in Module 1 with Forgive and Face Forward, if we really look at that dark stuff, right, the thing that we want to get away from the most, which is that automatic trigger, whether that's a panic attack or a breakdown or completely shutting off from people, right? If we take a moment to look at that dark stuff that we really don't want in our lives and we analyze it and we problem solve it, right, you'll notice that it breaks down into a series of expressions. And typically, it's a pattern. Your body doesn't do like a random chaotic response every time you get triggered, right? If you get triggered in a way that elicits maybe anger, typically you'll go through like a series of similar expressions every time, even though the trigger might be different. Same with sadness. So you'll find a pattern and you'll find similarities. And when you see that, you recognize, this isn't as chaotic as I thought, and I can actually figure out how to step in and how to change it. Custom built solution. Okay? I'm making it sound super fun, but like you're going to be like, why? Because you're going to have to experience it. And then you're going to have to, maybe after you go through it and you brace yourself for the ride, you sit down and you go, okay, let me look at what happened. Let me look at how I was feeling and how I was thinking and what my body was doing and how I was treating other people or how I was treating myself, right? Let me really look at that. So I would love to just give you the answers and then you just go do it. But what's even more beneficial for you and that you can reuse again and again is for you to analyze what's happening and then be able to go, okay, this is how I can step in and change it. I literally still use this today, even with things that don't trigger me, but I notice are patterns of behavior that I want to change. So that's what we're doing today. I'm going to walk you through the framework first, and then I will kind of give you the visual of that. and then I want you to put it into practice, okay? But the journal prompts in the workbook for this one are going to be massively helpful, and also seeing this, the visualization of this. Bear with me, we'll get there. So first thing I want to do is walk you through the Get Some Air framework. It's a very simple framework for a reason. Air is the word. Air is the word we're using. So get some air. A is analyze. I want you to see things for what they are in detail. Okay, don't make assumptions. Like, just step back and look at it. Don't judge it. Don't try to make meaning of it. Don't try to be like, what triggered it? And yada yada. No, just look at it. And that might be, I'll give you where I first put this into practice, and it was amazing. Road rage. Your girl was a big fan of the middle finger, curse words when no one could hear me. My horn was broken, otherwise I would have honked it. A lot. I'd roll down the window to get the finger out and everything. I was that, believe it or not, I was that person. So analyze, all right? I would look at that situation and go, okay, let me look at it as a series of events, right? What happened? Somebody did something on the road I didn't like. Immediately, I look back, and this might take a few times to analyze, that's okay. I look back and go, okay, my body got really hot, and I got really tense, and I could literally feel the heat in my neck. That was a body response. And then my brain would start thinking like, oh my gosh, that effing jerk, right? And then I would start to get super angry and just really fuming. And then I noticed that's when I'd start doing behavioral things. I'd start to flip them off, and I'd scream at them, and I'd call them all the names I could think of. And then after a while, I would just sit there, and I kind of just sit in that heat. And even though I stopped doing the hand gestures and the screaming, I'd still think about what a jerk they were and how could they do that. And I'd replay what just happened a few times in my head. And then I would start to kind of calm down, and the heat would subside, and I'd chill out, and then I'd probably go on to doing whatever the next thing was. I'd get distracted or something else would happen, and my focus would be over there. You can kind of find this entry point, and then all the things that you go through, and then an exit point. Okay, that's what we want to analyze is, okay, what all happened in this span? And it's detailed in the way I just gave you because I looked at it a few times, right? The first time was like, okay, I get super angry, I scream, and then I'm fine, and then I'm fine. And then I looked at it again, and I was like, oh, my body gets really hot. I can feel it in my neck. Okay, so after analyze is I in air, which is identify, right? This is where you get to look at what you've laid out, and you identify, where can I step in and actually help myself? Can I help myself move through this quicker? Or can I help myself kind of maybe stop the process from happening, right? And so you see all these opportunities. So I could identify that, oh, when I start to feel my neck get hot, I could take really deep breaths, and I could just breathe that out, right? The other thing I could do is, okay, maybe I want to fast forward myself through it. If the breathing's not helping me calm all the way down to where I can shut it off, okay. So I take some deep breaths, but I'm still ready to scream. Maybe I can try to not give him the finger and just go, that was ridiculous, but just scream in my car where nobody can hear me. Maybe I just need to scream first. And then I know that, after that, I kind of replay it. Maybe that's where I focus on gratitude and appreciation. And then I do some more deep breaths and I calm myself down. So you can analyze it, lay it all out, and then you can find all the little opportunities and identify where you can step in and help yourself, okay? Where you can nurture yourself through the process. And then R is respond and release, okay? Put it into practice and recognize what you're letting go of, okay? I'm letting go that I don't have to be this angry person in the car anymore. I can let things just pass me by a little easier. I get to be in control of my emotions. So I get to let go that chaos and that anger. I get to let go of feeling like I have to attack somebody to feel better about a situation, right? That's a really cool thing to be able to let go of. So analyze, identify, respond, and release. That's it. I know it sounds super simple, and it is, because the work is in analyzing it, identifying, and putting it into practice. Okay, that truly is where the work is. And it's not hard work. It just might take a little upfront effort to be intentional about seeing things. But then you put it into practice, and I literally don't get road rage anymore. I've been in cars with people where I see them have that reaction like I used to, and I'm just like, wow. Like, it's weird getting to watch, because I'm like, oh, I don't do that anymore. Literally because I taught myself to respond differently. And now it's just a really chill reaction. So this is also something that I have done with full-blown panic attacks and with depressive episodes. This can be applied everywhere. That was a very, simplistic example, but I want to go ahead and show you this visual map so that you can see the way we're going to really kind of draw it out. The way you draw it out, because I think having a visual is massively beneficial, and being able to see it all in front of you. So you can kind of see that I have instructions for how to do this, and then we go into a couple of examples. And so, I want you to create kind of this emotional baseline. And if it's only one emotion, that's totally okay. Like with the road rage example, it was really just anger. And under that, that's where you're going to get specific. And I think but the reason we start with the emotional baseline is because it's typically the easiest thing to be able to identify. Because it's just front and forward, it's right there, like you can't miss it. You can see that you're sad, you can see that you're angry, you can see that you're a number of things. Those are kind of my go-tos that I talk about. Or that you're anxious or overwhelmed, or, those kinds of things. So create this baseline for yourself. And then what I want you to do, of course, is to go in and look at those, those mental, behavioral, and physical responses. And you can see in this one that, this is one that literally I've gone through with my kids and my husband. And one of the things that, one of the opportunities, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I raised my voice, I cut people off when they were talking, I'd get really flushed, and, I wouldn't treat people very respectfully. And then, of course, after being that angry, I'd get really upset with myself, and so I'd start crying and doing negative self-talk, and I got really specific with those. Short of breath, I get a headache from all those emotions, and then isolated. You can just see how all of this, leads one into the other, and everything that's highlighted is an opportunity to step in. It's a spot where if I notice myself raising my voice, could I maybe be like, okay, let me talk a little softer. Let me see if I can lower the tone of my voice, right? If I'm cutting people off, could I maybe just stop and listen and take some breaths while I'm listening, right? Negative self-talk, I could come in with positive self-talk. A headache, I could close my eyes, and just really try to calm things down to help soothe that headache. And then, zoning out or falling asleep or loss of energy, I could be like, okay, maybe I can do some gratitude or some things like that, right? And you're basically going to make this list of solutions that you can use. You can get really specific about mantras. Something that's actually not on this list is, it is right here. So communicate efforts to move through. So I would tell my husband that, like, hey, I'm aware that this is happening right now. I'm aware I'm feeling triggered and all this is going off, and I'm really trying to put in an effort to move through it. And he would then understand that I'm attempting to help myself, and it would allow him to be more patient with me as well. So there's so many ways, and then releasing, the things that you can release. So I just wanted to give you these couple examples. You can look through these in more detail, but this one even has acid reflux involved, even more emotions, and that's an example from a student. And then, their solutions and their releases. So I kind of have my example and a student example, and you can see those there and be able to look at them in more depth. I have it for download in the module. So I want you to put that into practice with this. Really give yourself some space to do this one. If you want to kind of wait until you move on to the next module, that's totally fine. But I highly suggest you go through the workbook on this one. And again, get help with this if you can. My husband and I teamed up a lot. I've even teamed up with my kids. So I want you to know that this isn't impossible to do. Like I've told my doggies, I've told my husband, I talked about this in I think in this module or a previous one, we just communicate, and I'm like, hey, can you help support me through this? Can you be patient with me when I'm in this, time? And even with my kids, like I said, I would ask them, hey, could you give me some space? Or if you hear mommy yelling, can you tell me? And we can work together. We can maybe breathe together. So you can get support and help moving through this stuff, or bringing awareness to your triggers. So that's really what's so valuable about this. I could sit and talk on this forever, but honestly, I think this is a module that is far more crucial for you to start to implement. And I really want you to get on it because it's massively, massively powerful. And I don't want you to wait to experience the relief that this brings. And again, don't expect it to be perfect the first time or the second time or the third time. Okay, you're really getting used to getting to know the trigger response, and then you get to put it into practice. So it'll take a few times. And also have the awareness that some triggers happen more frequently and some happen further apart, and some triggers even happen years apart. And maybe it's like when you see family, you get triggered. So be mindful of those things, and don't feel like you have to make a bunch of different maps. Just focus on one for right now, and just make the one that is most prominent and most problematic for you, the one that happens the most, and start there. Okay. And then if you feel like, oh, but I've noticed I kind of have a different response around this other thing, feel free to apply it to that. I think that's a great thing to do. But don't overwhelm yourself. Just start with one map and start to put it into practice and work through it. And you'll notice that you can either speed through your response, because I know sometimes people can have anxious or depressed responses, or even anger. I know that was a case for me too, that would then last all day or days or weeks. And the goal here is to minimize that amount of time, because you have such an awareness of it. You can help yourself move through it to the next, stage. And eventually you'll learn, you'll be able to apply your tools and actually maybe cut it off and be like, okay, I don't have to get super angry. I literally can see this at the beginning, and then I can go ahead and just step in and help myself and stop the whole thing from happening. And then you eliminate it altogether, because you might also figure out in the process what thing triggers you, which is really cool. So don't try to figure out the trigger necessarily, but usually, most commonly, when you learn to have that self-control, eventually the why or the what makes itself known, and you can see that, and then you can shift your perspective around that and be like, oh, okay, this doesn't need to trigger me because I can see it this way, I can pull value from it, yada yada. So that's a really beautiful thing. So I will stop talking now, but definitely go do the workbook, go through all the journaling questions. Are really going to help you be able to fill out that visual map. And then, of course, the next module 5, Embracing Health, is going to unlock hiccup again. And you're going to, you can go ahead and dive into that when you're ready. This one module is probably going to feel like the most work, and that's only because you really kind of have to shine a light on it. It's kind of like module 1 in phase 1, where it felt like a lot of work, but it was a massive release. This is the same thing. Okay, we're starting off self-control. It is going to feel like work, but I promise you, just put in the effort. I know if maybe you're feeling tired or it feels like too much, take it little by little, but please do it, because it's going to be a game changer. All of it, I just going to keep saying it. It's going to be a game changer. But you've got this, and this is really going to help you beat the bad and take back control of your mental health, because your emotions are no longer going to be running your life, because you get to step in and choose what happens next. So I can't wait to see you in Module 5, Embracing Health. And please, if you need support, if you need feedback, with this map, I encourage you, share the map in the Facebook group as well, because it's really cool to get to see that laid out. And I can also be there to help you find more opportunities, or maybe suggest some tools if you need some guidance. Nobody's going to judge your map. Everyone in there is so accepting and so loving, and you are so supported in there. So if you have questions, or you need support, or you want some feedback, then I got you. So go in the group and I can chat with you in there as well. But I will see you in Module 5. You've got this. Sending you so much love.